He's the boss. All right, great. Hello, and welcome to our virtual movie discussion today. Our topic is the 2016 film Hacksaw Ridge. I am one of your hosts today. I am Dr. Karen Wisely. I teach history at TCC Northeast Campus, and joining me are my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Chloe Northrop. I am from Connect Campus. I am a professor and department chair for the history department.
Hi, I'm Samantha Elkins, and I also teach history at Northeast Campus. None of that department chair business, though, right now.
It's better on the other side, let me tell you.
Can't recommend it. Yeah. Our custom when we do one of these events is to start with a little introduction, and that's where I read the log line or brief description of the movie and then go over some of the main cast members and where you may have seen them before. So, the log line for Hacksaw Ridge, the true story of Private First Class Desmond T. Doss, who won the Congressional Medal of Honor despite refusing to bear arms during World War II on religious grounds. Doss was ostracized by fellow soldiers for his pacifist stance, but went on to earn respect and adoration for his bravery, selflessness, and compassion after he risked his life, without firing a shot, to save 75 men in the Battle of Okinawa. It stars Andrew Garfield as Desmond Doss. You most likely know him from playing Peter Parker's Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and in Spider-Man No Way Home, where apparently all the Spider-Men got together. He was also nominated for an Academy Award for his portrayal of theater composer Jonathan Larson in Tick, Tick, Boom. He was nominated for this role in Hacksaw Ridge as well. He didn't win either time, but he is, cute as a button. There's something weird with his hair, though. Is there not something weird with his hair that makes his head look really big? Is that just me? No?
He has a longer face than, typical, but he pulls it off.
Sure. Okay. Hugo Weaving is as Tom Doss. You may know him from The Matrix and its sequels as Agent Smith, or you might know him as Elrond, the elf, from any of the various Lord of the Rings movies. If you are a Marvel Cinematic Universe nerd, you see him as Johann Schmidt or Red Skull. He also does the voice of Megatron in a bunch of Transformer movies. So this man gets around. So he's really good. He has a very deep, imposing, serious voice. Good. Rachel Griffiths as Bertha Doss. You may know her, as I do, for playing Brenda Chenoweth in 6 Feet Under, but more likely you've never heard of that since it was on HBO from 2001 to 2006, which is before most of you were born. She was in another series after that called Brothers and Sisters, which is also excellent, but that was from 2006 to 2011, and you guys were just children. She's been in a bunch of stuff. She's one of those, I call them stealthy Aussies, that she plays American so well that I don't realize that she's from Australia until I hear her in an interview, and then I'm like, what is happening? She's really good in everything I've seen her. Speaking of stealthy Aussies, Teresa Palmer as Dorothy Shute. She was
Okay.
Okay, mine went mute too.
I thought it was me. I was supposed to be like,
I thought it was me. Karen, you went mute right as
we
you started to talk about. I was like, oh crud, is this my side?
Oh man, no. How about now? Sorry about that. All right. So Teresa Palmer as Dorothy Shute. She was in the 2011 movie I Am Number 4. She played number 6. That was a great movie. She was Becky in The Sorcerer's Apprentice. No, nobody. She was in the Point Break remake, but we don't like to talk about remakes. And she was in 25 episodes of A Discovery of Witches, which I've never seen, but from the scenes I've seen now, it looks really good. She's a stealthy Aussie. I did not know until literally yesterday that she was Australian.
Can I just point out that all the major actors now that you've mentioned are non-Americans playing in the movie? I just find it like slightly ironic playing.
I mean, we have a couple Americans coming up, but they play kind of the jerks, I mean,
yeah. But I mean, like all these people being from Virginia are like actually not
Australian or English or whatever. Yeah. And I think that has to do with Mel Gibson, but we'll get there. I just wanted to say that she's been married since 2013. She has 4 children. I want to say what their names are because I think it's weird. Here we go. Poet Lake Palmer, daughter, Prairie Moon Palmer, son, Bodie Rain Palmer, and son, Forrest Sage Palmer. Do those not all sound like they are like air fresheners?
Like maybe she's kind of like a little bit of like a hippie, kind of vibe. I kind of like get like an outdoorsy feeling with these. Yeah.
All right. Here's your American, Vince Vaughn as Sergeant Howell. You may know him from 2005's The Wedding Crashers and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 2009's Couple Retreat, 2008's Four Christmases, 2004's Dodgeball or Anchorman, 2003's Old School, and he basically played the exact same character in all of them. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong. I'm right.
No,
okay.
But I really loved the breakup with Jennifer Aniston. I really did like that one.
I mean, that was sure. Sam Worthington as Captain Glover. You may know him from Avatar, where he played Jake, and in the sequel, too. He was in Terminator Salvation, Clash of the Titans. I really thought he was going to be a bigger star after Avatar, but he really hasn't been. So I don't know what to say about that. Luke Pegler as Hollywood Zane. He was the naked guy. In case you were wondering, that's the naked guy. You may know him from such timeless classics as See No Evil and See No Evil 2. He was also in the TV series Spartacus, which was pretty awesome as I remember it, but that's mainly because of Lucy Lawless that I remember it being awesome. Okay. And finally, Luke Bracey as Smitty Riker. He was also in the remake of Point Break as well as G.I. Joe Retaliation. He's been in a lot of action movies. 2014's The November Man with Pierce Brosnan. That was really good. He's a handsome dude, well made, totally action movie fodder. So, I mean, what are you going to say? Hacksaw Ridge was released on November 4th, 2016 in the United States. It was directed by Mel Gibson. It was. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Achievement in Directing and Best Motion Picture of the Year, which it did not win. It did win 2, Best Achievement in Film Editing and Best Achievement in Sound Mixing. The running time for Hacksaw Ridge is 2 hours and 19 minutes. Is that right in the sweet spot, I think?
Yeah. For me. For this kind of a movie, yeah.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Okay. No complaints.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I thought it was definitely 100% a movie that was directed by Mel Gibson.
Okay, for our viewers here, what do you mean by that?
That there were just like, well, the ending is where I literally was sitting at my desk saying, why? At the end when he's wounded and they're taking him in slow motion on the stretcher, they show that montage of Japanese like officers killing themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why?
I don't know either, because it didn't have anything to do with the narrative of the story.
Not anything to do with the narrative of the story.
Mm-mm. And actually, to me, it seemed like he was dying, like that Desmond was going to die now. And
then like, they talked to the real Desmond.
Yeah. And so to me, I would have liked to see more of maybe a little bit like a closure, like, like what did this mean for him? How did he went back? Embracing what they really built up the wife, like embracing the wife again, going back home to your life,
Yeah. And her saying to him, you better come home to me. I thought that would deserve an end scene where
because they really did talk about their relationship at the beginning, and so it would be nice to see something with that closure. And also the fact that you did live until your 80s, and here's Hey, I have a lot to say about this movie, obviously. But like he did talks all over the nation for years and years and years afterwards about this. And I think that could have, I don't know, been in some way talking about a little bit about the legacy of this moment for him. And I missed that to me. And I wanted to see something about that. I mean, yeah, you see the real Desmond getting his awards and stuff, but like in the movie, I think that could have been a really great closure as well.
Yeah, it seems like they could have spent a little less time in the front end.
Yeah.
And added a little at the end to wrap things up.
Yeah, definitely. It didn't have any wrapping up. It was definitely like, and that's it. Like,
and we're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know about you guys, but like I felt like the whole very end documentary scenes that they added in, it was so clearly we filmed this for a totally different movie and we're gonna just kind of shoehorn it in there, feeling like, oh, we're gonna try to do something like Schindler's List, but it didn't work. In my opinion, did anybody else feel like that?
I like seeing the real things too at the end. I'm a sucker for that.
Well, okay, the funny thing is, I'm a sucker for it, but I was
Harry met
watching
Sally,
it going, I just want to watch this documentary. I just want to watch the documentary. I don't want to watch this movie now.
Interesting.
Like they just didn't feel joined to me.
No, there could have been a better kind of like, yes, closure that then I think that would have made a better like narrative sense for sure.
Yes. I won't lie, the moment that the movie ended, I turned to my husband and I was like, you know what? That actually would have been a better movie if he had died.
Okay. I did not feel that
terrible. But you know,
it wouldn't have been a movie if you died.
I know it would have been a movie instead of like ironically.
You wanted a tragedy.
It was one of those weird things. I'm watching the movie and it didn't ever quite fit. Like I never could figure out what they were trying to do. Like I was like, there were scenes that I definitely laughed out loud at, and I was like, was that supposed to be funny or was that supposed to be dramatic? I'm not sure.
Killing scenes. And so, do you know what I do when there's these kind of scenes like that? I play it in our library on 1.25. But let me tell you, those battle scenes it's too much. It's too much at 1.25.
Oh God.
It's like very frenetic.
I was sitting at my desk eating my lunch, watching it. And that scene where there's like maggots on the guy's face, and I was just like, well, I am finished. I am not eating anymore.
So I have a lot to say. Let's start out. They could have had one Adventist to come in and consult this movie because I saw a lot of problematic things. These are full disclosure. I was raised and I am like a 5th generation Seventh-day Adventist. So there is a lot here that was not done correctly. One, the dinner table. What are they eating there? This like meat thing? No, it would have been some kind of cottage cheese loaf, and or special K loaf or something like that. And that could have been easily done. And so had they just like had an Adventist come in and be like, this is not a table of an Adventist family here.
Didn't he say something about being a vegetarian and he
later, but at his own family meal, I don't even know what they're eating, but it was nothing Adventists eat. Okay. So let me just like, that was my first thing. I was like, Also, I think the fact too, Adventists do not drink alcohol, do not typically, here I'm drinking my coffee, drink caffeine. Many Adventists don't eat meat. And so I think too, the shame of the father being an alcoholic could have been brought out too. It wasn't just that he was drinking. It is something that you would have to hide from other Adventists. It would have been an incredibly shameful thing. It would have been ostracized. Like, I don't know if the dad was also Adventist too. So that could have also been played out, that it was more the mom perhaps. And also that picture on the wall, that is not Adventist iconography. I don't even know what that is. That was not, we have very distinctive images that are in people's homes, and that was not one of them. So just things like that I thought this could have been done better. But I think
Ellen White. I mean,
it could, there are a lot of images out there, and that was not one of them. And so I'm like, we could work on that. But there's a lot of things like that I thought could have been easily done had you just had they have history consultants on. I would have been happy. I'm like, Mel Gibson, let me help you out, hun, because you need help here. So that too, and I think just in general, talking a little bit about conscientious objectors. Now, here's my other part here. One of my professors from college, again, disclosure, I went to a Seventh-day Adventist college, did a lot of research on the history of conscientious objectors, because that was something that was very important to Adventists, and obviously with Desmond as well. And so there's a history of conscientious objectors going back to the Civil War, which is why the Adventist Church actually came together and formed so that they could get status as conscientious objectors. And I think like that could have been, I think, leaned into a little bit more about that as well. And also maybe even like broadening that out and looking out like what were other people doing during that time? How is it that he seemed like he was very singular? Was he? Like, I think that could have maybe been a little bit more explored as well. All right, that's all I have for now, but don't worry, I have more.
I expected you to have a lot, which is why I felt comfortable. Like, oh, I have to leave early, but don't worry, Chloe will handle this. Because she has a lot to say about this. Yeah, and I mean, it's again, it's kind of typical of your Mel Gibson movies, because we've done with Watch Wisely, we did one other one which was Apocalypto, and in that one I have
for Watch Wisely.
Oh yeah, but he didn't direct that one, did he?
He did.
No, but he was just wait, did he direct? Correct.
I don't think he did, because I think The Passion of the Christ was his first directing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but in that one, I had a colleague who studies that history, and was just he was apoplectic. He was so angry that they didn't hire a consultant, and were using, it's supposed to be a Mayan representation, and yet all of the symbolism and everything was Aztec, and they were treating it like it was one civilization, when no, it was not. and just all of the things like that, and the timeline of when the Spaniards came and things like that were just so messed up, and so I don't think that Mel Gibson is 100% interested in historical accuracy. I think he's much more.
It's not that hard. Like, to me, it's not. These are not difficult things like that we can do. We can easily, I think, fix some of these things.
Yeah. I think that it's even more obvious here, where it's an actual human being's life, his actual life. And so, that there are things that you should absolutely get right than a fictionalized version of, the Mayans or what have you. I think that he needed to have a little bit more academic rigor, but I'm just saying that it seems to be in his filmography, he really isn't that interested in accuracy.
Well, and what's interesting is that they have a documentary about Desmond Doss, and that's where they got like the footage at the end and everything. So so clearly he's seen some of the documentary, and yet he still didn't like adhere to it. And it's like, so you didn't even like adhere to the stuff that you did know. And that's a choice at that point.
Right. And because again, Adventists, like I said, are like, do not drink alcohol at all. And so it, like, to me, that was like such a, like, that thing, not only that, like their dad, like drinking and like being an alcoholic for real, that's something that would have been incredibly shameful as well. And so I think like to lean in on that, and also like they didn't even talk about Desmond maybe perhaps not drinking while the guys were, and things like that, which he would have definitely not been doing, seeing how he was a man of Seventh-day Adventist faith like he was. And so I think that they played in on some of it, but not others at the same time, that were, I think, like that would have at least made the relationship between him and his father like make more sense as well. And the fact that his father did come in and like go out to bat for him as well, when it seemed like he was just kind of not a good father in any way. I think that again, that like those are really important things that were just glossed over for me, that I would have liked to see, because it seemed like that is what made him the person he was out there, and like they didn't at all explore that. And I think that those are all really, really important. And they didn't, I mean, they talk about when he's in the hole with that guy the hot action guy who passed away.
Hollywood.
No, not Hollywood.
No, not guy. No. Okay, yeah, my guy. Is it Smitty? Smitty, that's it. Smitty. Yeah.
I think like he tells that story, and they didn't really explore that more. And I think like that obviously was very traumatic. I mean, they brought up the thing with the brother at the beginning, but then to reiterate that again, I don't know. There was more I think that could have been explored, because again, there were Adventists who did go and fight, who were not conscientious objectors as well. So what made him kind of go down this path and do that way? There were many who were conscientious objectors, but there were many who were. My great grandfather was an Adventist and went and fought in World War II and was a soldier. So, it just depended. I mean,
Yeah,
he wasn't a great Adventist, but still,
he's a bad man.
A little bit, yeah.
um, as she drinks the coffee. I think that there were some opportunities, and that would have been great. Like they introduced the dad, and they have him, at the cemetery talking to what were his best friends who died, and how traumatized he was by that, how he had the PTSD with that, how he self-medicated with the alcohol. That would have been more interesting to look into. It seems like he just missed a couple of opportunities, and also, like, if you want to show him as being ostracized from his buddies, from these guys in his unit, the drinking thing would have been a good way of doing that too, and it wouldn't have involved Hollywood being naked.
Exactly.
So, choices were made.
Choices were 100%
made.
made. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know, but it there were a couple of good stories there that it seems like he left maybe on the cutting floor. Maybe there's more footage of it or something that explored those avenues, but I would have liked to have known more about that. Was it the mom who was the religious one, and the dad wasn't? Is that why he went over and fought, and Desmond didn't, and his brother went over and fought, right? Volunteered. So
yes. And again, I think exploring that a tiny bit would have been really helpful for viewers to see that, like, even within certain Christian communities, there was a disagreement about what it meant to be that. And also what, like, I think at some point, like, maybe one of the commanding people would be like, what the hell is a CO? And then, like, like, maybe, like, that could have been a conversation, like, oh, these nutcases who don't like this or that. And, like, I've never heard of that or something. So that I think that could have given a little bit too, like, is this something that actually can be done? What does that even mean for that? So, and I know that it has been, like, there was a lot of bullying, if you will, towards those who did. Now, another thing I think that was interesting is the timing of when this movie came out. So I don't know, was this a big hit? I'm kind of like, now I'm wondering how it did. I remember.
I don't think it made. I think it made like 50 million or something like
it
that.
says 180 million.
180. Okay, there you go.
And the budget
it wasn't like
so
huge. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah, it wasn't huge. It wasn't certainly an Avengers film.
Right. But I think it's interesting because it comes out in 2016.
I'm gonna peace out here.
Okay, so it comes out in 2016, and in early 2017, we know that Me Too started, like, really taking off. And I think that the timing of this, in the way that we see, like, masculinity portrayed in a film, is an interesting avenue as well. What do you think about that, Samantha, as I get cashews for my 3-year-old?
No, yeah, it's a really interesting thing with that, because I love that that Chloe just brought up Me Too, because anybody struck by the scene that the first time the two of them kiss, she immediately slaps him because he didn't ask permission, but then it's like a good thing. And it has this, like, weird, just, oh my gosh, really, really weird feeling to it, because it's like, I don't know. I wish Chloe was in here because I want to hear her thoughts on this. Although I do see James typing in the chat and everything, that it's weird that they, like, made it like, oh, her saying no really meant yes in that moment. But that part of the film was also just weird to me in general, because the whole beginning, I was like, is this a war movie? Is this a rom-com? Is this... I don't know what this movie is trying to do. Oh, but he got what he saw in the movie theater. Oh, I forgot about the movie theater. Exactly. So he was definitely, and there's something to be said that sadly we see some of that behavior is, it's historically accurate when you really think about some of it, because when you're talking about, we were talking about the Me Too and like the kiss and the slap and everything like that. But unfortunately, some of that behavior is actually very accurate, because like the famous picture of like the one sailor like got the girl in the chokehold and everything like that, that you did see men take no as meaning yes from that movie. But it also is kind of one of those things that there are certain things that I don't need historical accuracy on in a film. And that is one of them. Because there's no need to, when we know that they had a really loving relationship. I've read a bunch of like memoirs from like their grandchildren, and they were like, oh, they were so sweet. You almost felt like weird being in the same room as them, because like she would sit in his lap, like even when they were older and stuff, and just like were really lovey-dovey. So it was kind of like, that was very much clearly a choice. That I'm like, why make that choice when it seems unnecessary? Especially when that actually could have been a great place to look at them being Seventh-day Adventist and everything, because they met in the church. She didn't become a nurse until after World War II, which once again, I'm not gonna be too mad about that, because I see why they put her as a nurse. Like that didn't make me angry. But like looking at what's missing, if they're not talking about like the faith, really, that was like a really missed opportunity there.
Yeah, and do you think it's because it's like, I don't know, it's not as fun to watch on I don't know. I was wondering about that. Oh, that is funny that the girl. Yeah, but I think that was like, it was to be funny too that they noticed it, but they just wanted to like. But I think it's interesting because I feel like it's also showing at this time a different form of like just masculinity in general. And I think like his, obviously, I think if you just watch this movie, a lot of times war movies, we're used to seeing war heroes portrayed a certain way. And I enjoyed this, especially in light of like, we think about like Me Too, seeing a different kind of masculinity being performed on the screen that's showing that you don't have to perhaps be this way to be a hero. And I think that was like maybe in some ways like a timely thing coming out, because
that's so interesting, because when you brought up Me Too, I immediately jumped to the kiss and the slap.
I know, which is, I think, a great point, but which was not what I was thinking. But
juxtaposed.
Yes, but I think as it went on, we are seeing though that this is not a typical war movie in many ways. This is showing somebody who is not, and oftentimes when we see these movies about war heroes, the ways that they become heroes are through violence and through like heroic acts, but often through really violent. Yes. Acts most of the time. And so I think that it's interesting that this movie does come out at the end of 2016, and 2017 is when we have, Alyssa Milano tweeting and Me Too, and really, I mean, although it's been around for a while, it really takes off in 2017 in a way that was different, right? And a way that became a lot bigger part of the public consciousness. And I just thought it was interesting that this movie came out just right then, and so it's almost coinciding with that we are seeing this different way, because I think a lot of times we say like, oh, well, back in my day, it was this and that. But actually, then you're looking at this and saying, no, back in your day, there were people who were heroes who didn't maybe need to do certain things in order to be, lauded and valorized as well. And I think that part to me was interesting, because it just showed different ways in which somebody could perform their masculinity, if you will, especially one that I would say we did not. He tells Luke, we're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. I have never heard anything about him being a homosexual ever. Again, he did a lot of speaking tours and went around. So I have a lot of friends who actually have met him before, and he did, but I'm not sure. I think probably he was just, I would say, invoking a popular film at the time. What do you think, Samantha?
So this would be Hollywood, right? Because wait, who was the one who said that? Because it wasn't Doss.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember who said that.
I'm not sure. It definitely, I would say.
They might have been invoking that more for a modern day audience in 2016, making that reference, but most likely it was probably just making a reference that everybody was going to know. Because if there's anything about this film that I saw over and over again when I was looking at like criticisms and everything of the film was that like Doss is the only one that has character and nobody else. They're all just like normal
really stock
people.
They're
and you
really
might know him as the
stock
naked
character.
one.
Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, Hollywood was the naked one. That was the only ones I could really pick out. And then there was the one that had the kind of weird face ghoul.
Oh yeah, right.
And I only really could pick him out because of the one scene.
Even Mel Gibson and Sam Worthington were very much like stock figures in there. They did not. And I think, again, some, like they did in the Tuskegee Airmen movie where they got together and they were kind of talking about where they came from and what they did and all those things. I love that. Like, I was an English major. I was this and that. And I think had they had those moments, you would have bought in. And then when they did die on Hacksaw Ridge, you would have felt differently, I think, when you know them, their background.
I'll be honest, I didn't care that much when most of them started dying.
No, because
I was
you
like,
didn't know
is that
them.
one dead? Is that one that one? I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I felt
you know what who we're missing here is Karen now for to help us out with this. If there was some homosexual innuendos in the movie, they went over my head. I would just have assumed because Wizard of Oz was a very popular film still. That's what I would have thought. But
especially that being the first color film and everything like that. I think it probably was just that. And it's a very American story, Wizard of Oz in general. So it's no surprise that we're also having them. I took a children's lit class like way back in the day, and they talked about like Wizard of Oz is one of the first like democratic novels and everything like that. It's a very American story. We don't see it in the movie as much, but like, so it's very much because I think at the end they like vote in the Scarecrow or somebody to be the leader of Emerald City. Like they like take democracy, which is funny because you don't see that in the movie. But
no, but it could be. Who knows? Yeah,
so
I
wasn't too surprised on that. It's an interesting thought though, because I mean there would have been gay men who would have served in the army, and they could have easily said something like that. And no one would have known at the time. So maybe it's even being historically accurate and that we don't know.
Yeah, the ambiguity is out there. That's kind of fun. So, okay. So one of the questions I had too is, do we think that this movie, because this one always sort of think, do you think this movie could be made now and would it be as successful now if it came out?
Ooh.
Because every movie we see, right, is like a product. Yes, it's a historical film, but it's also a product of the time in which they come out, right? And so we see these movies, and so many of them that we've seen, we've kind of like, oh, it's so 1990. It's so this year. And it's reflecting, though, the time and everything that's going on as well, right? It's a reflection of both, one being historical. So Jay says, yes, do you think it would come out? And do we think it would be successful right now?
I actually think it would be, because right now we're seeing a lot of like anti-war movements in general across the globe. And so to have somebody who took, and just so many more of our students, like we look at, like we've talked about it in classes recently for me, but also we've talked about doing an event that talks about like the philosophy of like dropping the atomic bombs and everything. And so a movie about a conscientious objector who goes on to save so many lives, who is objectively the so-called good guy in a war, when war is, we know, really more complicated than that. I think it could be made. I think it could be made better. I wanted to ask you about this because this was something I felt like I was picking up on, but I didn't know if I was looking too much into it. Did you feel like they were trying to dehumanize the Japanese side? Because almost every time they came together fighting, we were seeing the American soldiers' faces. And almost every single time we were seeing the Japanese soldiers, even when they were dying, most of the time we were seeing their backs. So we weren't seeing
the ones you did see were hanging in that like sewer thing he was in, or they were like killing themselves and things like that. Those are the faces you saw. No, I think so. And I mean, it was how they were referred to. Yeah, I think that definitely. I mean, it's very pro-American side for sure, but yes. And so in that way, I think that to dehumanize them, to also show them pretending to surrender, and then that, I mean, it's just showing that there are definitely like this isn't one of those movies like there are two sides to the story. Like that is not the case here. Yeah.
Well, and I felt like there were so many times that I couldn't tell because obviously they used derogatory language towards the Japanese soldiers. But that was actually historically accurate, and that didn't bother me because, once again, if they hadn't, it would have felt like out of place.
Right.
Because
it would have always been like, it's too
like,
2016. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like, it's not like, we know it's not appropriate now, and so we're going to like outdate it. And yeah, and I think that you're right. It doesn't bother me as much to hear it now because in a movie like this, because it is so incredibly historically accurate.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that I kept running into certain things, and I swear I was really struggling with figuring out if this movie was historically accurate or not in certain things, because sometimes I would run into one source that was like, oh, this was super not historically accurate. And then the next thing I would look into, somebody was like, no, that's super accurate. And I'm like, okay, I am getting conflicting messages. And so like one of the things I ran into is one of the biggest complaints was about like the huge amount of violence in it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also saw that there was a few people, I guess, that were present or were kids of people who were present at Hacksaw Ridge saying that, like, no, this was actually really accurate, but especially regarding, like, the tunnels and everything, which that I'm like, I wasn't as worried about. So, like, I wanted to ask your opinion on that. Do you think it was, like, the extreme amount of violence?
I mean, right. And I think like from what we see, the violence in the battle was accurate. And if anyway, maybe even like not fully portraying, like, because again, when you're watching the movie, you're only seeing such a small part of it. And sometimes when they would pull back and just showing the sheer just terror of it, and really these just how many combatants are really involved as well. And they try to coordinate between the Navy and the Army and stuff. It is really complex, and also very, I mean, like just opportunities for friendly fire, kind of like, a lot of that as well. And I think like that made me feel bad, that when you just think that you're maybe helping and you're really like not in the end, you're just like probably killing your own people by going in with some of that artillery and everything. And so that was really like horrible. Now, one thing I was kind of wondering is, why didn't anyone go help Desmond more while he was getting all these guys up the hill? Like, were there nobody that could go up and like just at least be at the edge and help bring these people down? Like, I feel like he was like single-handedly up there, and I'm like, where's everybody? Like, you could get yourself up that hill and go help some of these people.
Like, it's such a great moment when they finally start noticing, like, where did all these men come from? And I'm like, how have you not noticed this?
Yeah, like all night you're just watching these people come down, like, go Desmond, you just keep going on your own. I'm like, where are the other ones? I kind of thought that, like, why? Yeah, it was like, I mean, I get that it's just company, but maybe more could have happened had there just been maybe a little bit more help.
No, it did feel like that. And I wondered about that because it's funny because we use the number 75, and it turns out we really don't know how many people he saved. And we do know he was up there kind of alone, which is like still, once again, really weird to me. I don't know how much about the bow tie. I didn't find any information about that particular thing. But he was pretty much up there alone. I loved that they showed us that he kept saying just one more. I was
okay. That actually moved me. I was getting emotional with that, and especially when he said at the end, because I think it is really powerful. That's a powerful line.
Yeah, no, it's such a powerful line, and I absolutely loved it because it wasn't. One of the things that we've been talking about here was just how much you expect going into a war movie, what to be the winning moment, what to be the emotional moment, what to be the thing that like hooks you. And a lot of times it is survival, but a lot of times it's surviving an assault, it's surviving a fight, it's a surviving death or anything like that. And I love that James is putting this over here, that it spotlights his great accomplishment. And that's the thing, is it spotlights that he really does. Oh my gosh, yes, the I can't hear you, Lord. And then he hears the cry for help. Now, I don't know if that was like 100% accurate there. Like, I didn't find anything that said it wasn't, but I didn't find anything that it was. But I did love that because it was this like, he didn't feel like he could go down. And he was like, what am I doing here? Like, what is the purpose of me being here? And then it was like, oh, this is the purpose. And he saved so many people, but we actually don't know how many people he saved. He thought he saved closer to 50. And it turns out his commanding officer was like, no, I'm going to say you saved 100. And so they basically averaged the two and said that he saved 75. But no one was particularly like counting specifically how many he saved. And a lot of it gets really complicated. Now, one thing that I really liked about the saving thing, but was interesting when I looked up some information, is they mentioned that, like, oh, he even saved some Japanese people. Did anybody else find that really fascinating? Just out of curiosity, I have some people typing. And so I want to see what people are thinking before I just like talk at you guys. Because apparently what I can say is in reality, we don't know how many people he would have helped that were Japanese. There is some evidence to suggest he helped Japanese people. So yeah, because he was a humanitarian, like I wasn't surprised in the movie when they said that. We're talking about the Japanese people that he might have helped. So apparently there's some evidence that he did help some Japanese people, but at one point, what I did find information on is that he was literally held at gunpoint by other Americans, and they were like, do not give like the morphine to Japanese people. And he basically was like, yeah, I wouldn't have given it to them because I knew my boys would kill me if I did.
But did you hear about the ones that they went down the hill and the guy's like, they didn't make it?
Yeah, they didn't make it. I was like, yeah, I'm picking up on the subtext there. And the thing is, what's interesting is after Hacksaw, they did find some Japanese bodies that did have some American bandages on them. Not necessarily that they had morphine, but they had American bandages. And so that is some of the evidence that Desmond Doss probably did help some random Japanese people up there, but he probably wouldn't have lowered them down like they did in the movie. I would hope that he would have known what fate they would have met if he lowered them down, but you know, I did like that moment in the movie.
Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I've met some really, I would say, naive adventists out there that I would like not put it past them. Like they'll be like, oh, okay. Like but I mean, yeah, I definitely think if you believe like you're helping mankind, and also too, I mean, like that the battle, I mean, yes, they're your enemy, but if they are wounded, that they deserve to be like treated kind, I don't know. And I mean, I could definitely see someone at least constructing it that way. Yeah.
That. And I know that there are people that protested Vietnam by doing that went over to Vietnam and tried to give out medical aid even handedly. But like, there's almost like, that's not surprising in Vietnam. It is very surprising in World War II. Especially in the Pacific theater. Oh my gosh.
Right.
I was like,
there's a lot, right. There's a lot, the far west. Yeah.
So far west or east.
Yeah, there's a lot of anger though, for sure. And I think that it's maybe like harder for us now, so far removed away from it, to understand how upset people were after Pearl Harbor, and how that, I mean, and how just most Americans were feeling. And so now, I mean, like so many, almost 80 years later, we're looking at things from a very different perspective now. So we're at the 80th anniversary of many of these battles now. What do we, how do you think like we are remembering this, these kind of moments now, 80 years later?
I think there's an element more of respect at this point, because like I said, we have, most of us in our lifetime haven't seen a great war. Like even the people who are alive today, like they remember Vietnam and everything, but like there isn't been like a World War I, hasn't been a World War II. Like we try to avoid those things. And I think about like, I show with the World War II, anybody seen the like numbers of World War II? That's like the something of the fallen that has all the numbers. Have you seen that, Chloe?
No.
Oh, dude, I'm going to send it to you. It just shows the numbers of basically the deaths and everything from World War II. And it ends with this whole like question about like, we haven't had a big war since really like World War II and World War I, that we have these small wars generally between a big nation and a small nation during like the Cold War and everything like that. But like we haven't had big wars between big nation, so to speak, partly because of like, you know, nuclear weapons and everything like that. And so I think that we've moved towards a different era a little bit in society, that we're not, I wouldn't say that we're peaceful by any means, but I think we want to be even more so. And we're trying to understand the psychology behind violence a lot more and everything that we weren't necessarily doing in World War II. What would you say? Do you think?
Well, I remember, okay, so I saw this movie in the theater with my husband when it came out. And as we were walking out, an elderly couple like turned to like, kids these days will never understand what these people went through. And I turned to her and I said, I'm a professor and I have a lot of students who are veterans, and that is not necessarily true. And I just kind of wanted to like stop and be like, there are veterans out there. You do not know what people have gone through. And just to say kids nowadays, and I see someone in here saying like I'm way too lazy, that could be like, that is like for many of us, yes. And I will never know what someone like this went through. But I want to tell that lady, neither do you. You haven't either. But I have students who have combat in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So you don't, and just saying that statement, you don't know what people might have gone through. And I didn't, it just like to say like kids these days don't understand it, like they might understand far more than you ever will. So how about you just like check yourself? And I told her that, and my husband actually like, afterwards, like, what were you saying? And I was like, oh, I heard her say something, and I like had to like stop and be like, excuse me, because he didn't hear what she said or really what I was saying either. Because but yeah, and I think that that's important for us to remember as well when we make these things. But I think for many of us, though, it is so far removed. It's hard for us to even imagine. Like for us, we don't know. Perhaps, I mean, there are very few World War II veterans still with us who are still alive. I was at the YMCA this morning. My child goes and plays there while I work in the mornings on Fridays, and there was an elderly group waiting for their bus to come get them and take them back to their home, and they looked really old. And one of the ladies was like, "Oh, my dad fought in World War II," and I was like, "My goodness!" Now people whose fathers fought in World War II are now now the elderly ones. It's not just the veterans themselves who are aging; it's now like the next generation and things. And so for many people who might have never even like, I mean, met a World War II veteran, perhaps because it is like, it's been a while now. We're thinking as we're coming up next year, we'll be at the 80th anniversary of so many of these kind of pivotal events. And I think it's important then for us to kind of think about them then. Like we're going to be at the 80th anniversary next, like right now at this time next year for the Battle of Okinawa. So I think it's these like moments now that we can kind of take and reflect, like, what does this mean? How are we remembering it? And I think movies like this show us, I think it's important for us to see that violence. And also we know that the atomic bomb is coming, and it's easy for us now to say, oh, it shouldn't have happened. Oh, we should never cross these lines. But I think maybe when we see these things too, it's reminding us the incredible violence and the cost of American lives that was happening too, that maybe gives us, maybe we'll give a little grace to the leaders at the time who were making the decisions. And for me, I know I'm glad to not have to make those kind of decisions, because either way is like there wasn't like a great path that we just didn't go down or something. Both sides of these here are really horrific to contemplate. And I think like it's easy for us, again, 80 years later, to say like, oh, we should have done this or that, and that would have made everything. But like, we don't know that. And then looking at a battle like Okinawa, yeah, and the terrible emotional fallout exactly that happens from humans doing this to one another. And I think when someone says like, I don't know how I would react in that situation, nobody does. I think like, who would have, like, Desmond might have never known how he would react to a situation like this until put into it. And then you like, that's when I guess your real character comes out, right? That you're able to do something like save 75 people's lives because you are put in this situation. So who knows what we would do? And I would hope, and we've asked ourselves this question several times, right? When we were talking about the judgment at Nuremberg, and we're saying these are just regular people who chose to either do nothing or chose to kind of allow atrocities to happen to other people. And so we're seeing the other side of that now, I think, in an interesting way. That someone then has a choice and then chooses to do some good in this world. And I like that. But also, like, what kind of lessons can that give for us now, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. No, I really, you brought up like the extreme amount of violence and trying to understand it and everything like that. And while I saw that was one of the biggest critiques about the film, that the violence was like overhyped and stuff, which I'm sorry, some of it with the how many bodies flew through the air was a little like, okay. Because I was like, okay, no, they're using flamethrowers. That was historically accurate. Oh, you know, the bombings and how the dirt is all thrown up. Like, that's historically accurate. Like, I didn't have problems with those. But how many times the bodies just happen to fly through the air in the perfect little, like, flip thingy. And I'm sorry, like, the kicking the grenade. How he did that. Like, I didn't mind him kicking the grenade. I minded how he did that.
Like
it was
like a soccer player.
Karate.
Yeah. And like the slow motion too is like, okay, that was a little much.
Yeah. So like that was a little much, but at the same time, one of the things that I saw that I really liked about that was talking about that it really then gives the juxtaposition of just trying to be so peaceful, like Desmond Doss was doing in the film, while all this violence is going on, that you really, it puts that even more into perspective. And we see him actually hold the gun at one point because he didn't notice.
At any of those times, like when I'm in that little hole and someone's coming, I'm grabbing anything near me, and I'd be like here I am, right? So I that's what I was wondering, because when you're scared again, you do things that you might not want to do or even feel like, right? I think it's human nature, and also self-preservation. There's something in you that's going to want to keep fighting, I would think. And the fact that want to live, like, get yourself off this hill, you know? Right?
And that's what's so fascinating, that he doesn't leave.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Because I think I'd be scrambling off that edge as soon as I could and getting the hell off there. But yeah, and so
I guess that's the difference between us and Desmond Doss.
I know. I would like to think I'm the kind of person who would stay up.
Flight.
Yeah. Yes. I'd be flight or flight.
Yeah, but he chose a third option.
Yes. And so that's, there is.
And I think, like you were saying, like looking at it through a lens of today, like it being so long ago, and it being like, it is hard to identify with, even though we have some people who can still identify with it in that moment and everything. It's not like, because the whole thing, okay, I couldn't tell in the movie if they did this right. I know he was drafted in real life, and he could have deferred because he was working at a shipyard,
a defense kind of thing.
Yeah, it was defense contract and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Was he?
And a lot of people did get, and a lot of people were able to get that deferment, because it's something that does need to happen as well, right?
Yeah, but in the movie, did they make that clear? Or did they make it more like he signed up?
Yeah, it definitely in the movie that he volunteered and went in. Yeah. Okay. So there's and I think but I guess it helps the narrative line of it, showing that he really wanted to do it, maybe in a way that if you're drafted, it that's more murky, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Then I don't have as much of a problem with that, because they're trying to show his character. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that.
And also, I think it provided the intention for him and Dorothy as well, because she's like, how would you go? You know, so I think that it, like, the narrative wise, it worked, even if it wasn't like 100% accurate.
Yeah, like, and I don't mind things like that are, if they're trying to, and especially because they were focusing on, it wasn't like they were trying to focus, okay, yeah, the movie's called Hacksaw Ridge, but let's be honest, it's the Desmond Doss story.
Right.
That happens to go to Hacksaw Ridge. But I think that was the biggest complaint that we're having, is that the end, then we're not getting to see the rest of his story. Like, we're not getting to see the fact that he was given too many antibiotics and went blind for a time. Or no, not blind. I'm sorry. He went deaf for a time until he got cochlear implants, like 7 years later or something. Like, it was years later. That was why his wife became a nurse, is to basically make money for their family and everything. And I actually would have enjoyed seeing that, because it would have been showing the
after effects of it.
Yeah, that he was so determined to serve, and that he suffered for his serving.
Yeah.
Beyond just like conscientious objector, but like actually as a soldier as well, even though he never shot a fire, like fired a shot, whatever.
Yeah, shot a fire, either way.
Shot a fire. He didn't do that either.
I think that's a really good point too. And also, I think to be able to go and inspire generations of people by telling this story as well, and going and doing like talks all around the nation. We have this thing in church called Pathfinders, and it's like this, like the kids get together, and it's kind of like our version of Boy Scouts. And he was a huge person to go and do talks all around the nation. And I mean, my dad talked about seeing him when he was little. He came to our town and like talked at the college and stuff. So I think like the fact that you continue to do good things and talk about your own experience. And also, again, Adventists don't have a lot of heroes to look up to. If you know anything, we do not really. And typically on films, we are not portrayed really well because we're kind of a strange bunch in many ways, but also like there's been some unfortunate Adventist adjacent individuals, which I mentioned last time, including David Koresh, who, if you don't know who that is, like Google that. And it's a really horrific and terrible story in Waco, Texas. So, and that we just passed I think the 30th anniversary of this one. So, yeah, so to see a positive portrayal of an Adventist, I think for us was a really like lovely moment to be able to have that.
And that's why it's a bummer that they don't even portray it correctly.
Yeah, I think so too. I think like that's when that like I see that about hitting the brother with the brick. Is that a biblical?
Ooh.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's showing that he could have perhaps killed him, did it? And I think like all of those things were definitely setting him up for that, like the like how he's going to be an adult for sure. There's a lot of those
that
kind of
did
moments.
happen. That part he did. What I read is he didn't actually hit him with a brick, but he had something heavy that he threw at his brother, and his brother was like knocked unconscious, and they were worried for a moment that like he was going to be dead. So apparently some of that did really happen. Now the whole gun scene that he defends his mom from his dad, apparently it was really that like he defended his uncle, his mom's brother, who hated the two of them together from his dad. And his mom actually gave him the gun and said, go hide this. But somebody had already called the police. And so he went and hid it, and he came back to find his dad being arrested. And he was like, I will never touch a gun again because my dad could have easily killed my uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a very unstable family life out there.
Yeah, and that's what I did want to ask you about this, Clay, because I was really curious, because when you bring up the Adventist stuff and everything with the dad, I kept getting mixed. Like, I couldn't figure out what was accurate and what wasn't, because I was getting these mixed, like, notes of some people were saying the problem with it is that, like, the dad actually did really care about his family a lot, and so the movie doesn't portray that well, because it shows him, like, beating the wife and everything like that. But then at the same time, I was getting other information that was saying that, like, no, he really did beat his sons and stuff. And like, yes, we know he's suffering from PTSD. Definitely. Thank you so much for putting that in the chart. But like, I was wondering, do you know like how accurate, or have you found anything on that? I'm just curious.
I have not about his home life. No. And I think that would have been, again, something that would have been a great thing to explore more in here, you know, because I think that a lot of times these kind of things are ones, especially in a close-knit community like Adventist, sometimes like if that's happening, you don't talk about it and you don't bring it up because it's so shameful that this
so that
is
might be why I'm getting mixed reports. Is how much it was accurate.
Yeah, like if people, we don't talk about it, because I know, you know, in like my mom's generation and above, there was some, I mean, she lived in a really close-knit Adventist community, and there were some friends who were being like abused by certain people in the church, and like things like that were not talked about because these were really important people and things like that. So, I mean, I feel like that would have been good to explore as well, because it's really an insular community. Things like that are really embarrassing for some people. And so they just like say like, oh, we don't mention it. We don't talk about it, whatever. So I think that might be why you don't always get these full stories. And it's not until later that comes out and like, oh yeah, like that person was like, that was happening.
And that's what they were saying is like, I think some of the grandchildren were saying some stuff about like, oh yeah, no, we were never left alone with granddad. And now we're starting to realize why kind of like it would be Desmond's children.
Right.
Kind of talking about it. But I'm also like, do you think that's one reason why it wasn't made until after Desmond died?
Yeah, that too, because I think like you might know, I mean, I definitely don't disagree with that part there, that I think that sometimes it's hard if you like, I mean, you love your parents, but then they also maybe do things. Yeah, in real life, Village to 96. Yeah, that's amazing too. Only the good die young. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I think
geez.
that, yeah, the father was a really complex character as well. And I wanted to know more about how he kind of went to bat for Desmond when he was doing that stuff as well, because I think that that would have been a good kind of full circle had they had a reconciliation kind of moment there. And like the dad like saying like, do better than I like, come back, come, you know, or something like that, you know, like come back whole, don't break your soul or something like that. It to like, I think that that could have helped kind of like narratively, but
or even if we had seen the dad on his own, like praying or something,
yeah,
like it would have been
be
a
with
nice.
Desmond. Yeah, I can't be there for Desmond. I'm like, God, be there for Desmond. Or something. Yeah, that would have been like, okay, like he does
And
love him.
do we even see the dad anymore?
No, never again after he goes in, or the mom. Yeah, we do not.
No. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, no. Oh my gosh.
So what happened?
Yeah, it's like they forgot they hired him.
Yeah, they forgot that they were like a big part of the first part of the movie, and we never see them again. Which that's what's like one of my complaints about this is that it's like, yeah, like to be able to have like a full circle, like a closure. We need to close the loop on some of these things, and we did it. But is this because of like, is this a Mel Gibson situation? Is this a war movie problem? And these are all things that I have like questions about. Yeah.
Now, I do know, we were asking about the going to bat thing, and I did look up that because I was like, okay, did Dad really step in? Because I did like the details of him wearing the Great War uniform.
Yes.
That was nice. I was like, oh, because I couldn't tell how different it was till he walked in the room, and I was like, oh, it is different. Like, oh, that's interesting. But no, I did look it up, and apparently, in reality, it never went as far as it went in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
The dad stepped in a little earlier and sent like a letter, but like talked to, it was something like the parish pastor. Sorry, I grew up in the Catholic church, so I always call it the priest.
No, it's a local. We just have a local pastor.
So the local pastor, and they reached out to someone who had connections. And that's like how they got that information. So it never actually got to the court martial, but he was kept from leaving. He actually was kept from leaving to go see his brother. And I think that would have been really nice instead of
the brother just disappeared too.
I know, the brother just made, and I actually really I would have liked them to bring the brother back in because that was such a big part of why he chose not to kill, was because he almost killed his brother as a kid. Right. So I really, there was like these missed opportunities to make like
these threads that were just cut rather than like, what do we call it? Knitting?
Yes.
Like
there's like a rule of 3 in a lot of good movies that it happens 3 times. Like it would have been nice to like bring it back, but they yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think like this had the ability to be like a really lovely movie, and it fell short in so many ways, and yet I think it's such a really powerful story still, and I'm happy that it's out there. Yeah, and I'm happy it's out there because again, I think especially when it came out, it's showing that there are these different ways then of being a hero, and that you don't have to be this certain kind of macho guy or whatever in order to, you know, do these kind of things, right? And I think that it was an important and a timely film then, and I'm glad it came out. I would have done it a little differently, I guess, but then again, I'm not Mel Gibson, and so I'm happy that it's out there. And again, as an Adventist raised individual, I am happy that there are positive portrayals of these, because this is a very large. I know that probably like when you feel like I've never even heard of Seventh Adventist before. It is a very large religion. Yeah, I mean, in the world. And so I think that it is it's important that there's like, yes, representation, if you will. So yeah, and also again, I just looked up in 2019, there's 21 million baptized members in the world. And so yeah, that's a pretty and
there's so much. I tell my students a lot of times, I'm like, okay, I'm not practicing Catholic, but I'm culturally Catholic. And that means like I see certain TV shows and representation and I go, oh, that is my childhood. Oh, that is like I connect with that character because of that. And so like to give that representation and to do it right would have been really nice for Seventh-day Adventists. And it wouldn't have taken away from anything from my movie going experience. Because like you were mentioning things like the iconography, what was on the table, could have easily done the drinking thing. Because like I kind of figured he didn't drink, but I wasn't 100% sure. Like I was like, what are the rules for this? And like they brought up the vegetarianism way later. And I went, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. I've never eaten meat in my life. Like still, I don't have like pierced ears, like just things like that are like culturally, like that will always be with me. Yes. So no. And so I think like very easily it could have been a better movie, but I'm glad it's out there still.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, let's be honest, our job is to tear these movies apart on some level and be like, let's complain about certain things because we're historians. But as movie going, like I enjoyed it. Like just sitting and watching it before looking up stuff, I was like, yeah, I've got some weird issues with some like, okay, I didn't need maggots. I didn't need all the rats.
Rats. Oh no, thank you. Yeah.
I didn't need that, but I really didn't know if the rat thing was them trying to compare the Japanese to rats or something too, because there was like, I don't know, like, especially when they came out of the holes in the ground, like, I don't know, it felt like there was some statement trying to be made, but that might have been me putting it on because I knew Mel Gibson was the director.
So what I mean here is murder the same thing as war. And I think that is like the question, one of those that they're trying to explore in here.
Oh, you muted. Okay.
Yes. So it's one of the questions that they're trying to explore. And I was kind of wondering what you thought.
Ooh, I don't know. I don't like these questions because I am generally pretty much a pacifist. If you talk to my husband, I'm like, no guns in our house, period, ever, never. I don't want it. I don't want anything like that. I'm just, I don't like that. So I am not a good person to ask necessarily because I try to be the kind of person that ignores it. It's interesting because we actually, oh my gosh, it was last week. We did the 25th anniversary of the Columbine shooting stuff. And they were talking about the psychology of some of the shooting. And one of the things mentioned was about how there's kind of two types of people. They're the people who focus and hyper fixate on it and think about like all the things they can do and what do they do and yada, 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 and like want to fix things. And then there's the people that are like, I'm going to just ignore it. Like, I don't want to think about it. And I'll be honest, for war, for me, that is my, like, I'm gonna just, yeah. And I tell all my students, I am not a military historian. I'll admit that that's my weakness. I'm like, I guarantee you there's really good books about some of this military stuff out there, guys. They're gonna do a way better job than if I tried. So we'll leave it at that. But what about you, Chloe? What would you say?
You know, I think again, these are one of the things that I like to pose these questions in my class rather than answer them. And like as at lecturing.
Oh, I love this that somebody has answered it. I'm going to read yours. I don't think so. I believe murder is more with a hatred intent, unlike war, where the intent is to fight something more than yourself, such as the protection of others. And I do think that you definitely get that feeling from Hacksaw Ridge. I like that you describe that, especially with protection of others and everything, because he is about protecting his group, even though like he's been bullied by them and has faced adversity from them as much as anything else. I would also add, though, that there was a lot of animated hatred, especially in the Pacific Theater. They were not even allowed to keep diaries or anything in the Pacific Theater, which is one reason we have so few primary sources from that region. There was a few kept in secret, so I guess gun-ho the people who didn't follow the rules, for us historians at least. But yeah, there was very much this animated hatred with the racism in America at this time. And it's interesting because is it a hatred of an individual versus a group? Like where does that line cross? And then you could pose it with things like assassinations. are assassinations politically minded, or are they personally minded, or is there really a line there at all? And then we're getting into philosophical questions that I have no business answering, honestly. So I'm going to stop there and let Chloe talk.
I hear you there. No, I think that is, no, I think that you guys bring up incredibly good points.
Yes.
And I guess that that's why we watch these movies, and that's why we have these conversations, that we can think about this, especially I think as these kind of like anniversaries are coming up and we're maybe seeing these things on the news and we're seeing these things kind of come up again in like pop culture, that it's good for us to think about this. And I mean, like, again, whatever we come up with and whatever we're kind of exploring, it's great for us to ask that, because hopefully something like this doesn't happen again. But who knows if we are ever put in these situations, even in a different and I would say hopefully not a stressful way, it is a time then that we can kind of see who we are, maybe in a small way. Yeah. So what is the next movie we're discussing, Samantha?
Oh my gosh, I need to share all the links with you guys. I am so sorry.
Yes, please do.
I am dropping the ball here. Oh man.
It's all good.
Professor Wisely would be so mad at me. Not really, but
she's not here though, so it's okay.
But she'll probably see this recording. So first of all, here is the attendance form. Please fill out the attendance before you leave. We love that you guys came. And if anybody wants to unmute themselves and actually talk, we would love to hear from you. But we also understand if you just want to type in the chat. And we do love the people who have been really typing in the chat, because there is just really great things that you guys have been posting. I've been like distracted by it because I want to read everything you guys are writing and talk at the same time. So there's the attendance survey, but then also we have a few links here that I've just included them all together to make it a little faster, easier on myself, honestly. We've got our TCC history events. I know that we have one more movie discussion this semester. We are doing Unbroken. And so that's going to be really, really interesting, looking at like Japanese prisoner of war and everything like that. So yeah, interested to see it. I also get the feeling it's going to be very brutal. So warning there. And then we have tons of past events that we've been doing on all these different campuses. I know that like Professor Northrop can attest to that. She's just finished a few events with Connect Campus. I've seen them up there going, oh, I need to watch this. So we have tons of past events that are on the history website that I've linked here as well. And then thirdly, we have our Watch Wisely. We're in the process of definitely catching up. We definitely haven't recorded for a while, but we do have some episodes of that, especially things like I want to always bring up. Unfortunately, we had a problem with the recording for Schindler's List, but we have done the Watch Wisely for Schindler's List. So I'm just saying, definitely go watch and check out those. They're on YouTube right now, but we're trying to get them up on a podcast website. And then also, if you've been really interested in all this, we are going to do 2 events this summer. The first is going to be Saving Private Ryan, and we're going to do that on the anniversary of D-Day. And of course, that escapes my mind right at this moment because my brain is like done with dates.
If you look at the site, the History TCC site that's on there, you'll see it's June 6th. And then July 3, we have Echoes of Liberty. We're going to be talking about the 250th anniversary of 1774 and how that relates then to the 4th of July. And then we also have a Juneteenth webinar on June 14, and Casablanca is July 18. So mark your calendar. We have 4 events this summer, which is pretty a lot for us.
Are 3 of those in summer 1?
2 and 2, I think.
2 and 2. Okay,
wait,
good.
July 3 is that's still summer 1, isn't it? Yeah. So
July 3 is almost in between, I think. I haven't looked at summer 1, summer 2.
I think it's, actually, I think that might be summer 2. I need to look up. So I think it's 2 in summer 1, 2 in summer 2.
Definitely
but
what we planned.
Don't
definitely
planned
these things perfectly and with all 100% intention by all means.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to see you again at a future event. So have a wonderful time. Have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming.
All right, bye for now.
We got lots of people.